Have you ever been caught in a moment that changed everything? Picture this: a quiet kitchen, the soft hum of the refrigerator, and the morning light spilling in through the window. That's where this story begins. A story that will make you question what you think you know about trust, relationships, and second chances. Hi everyone, and welcome back to English Stories with Sienna. Today we're diving into a tale of surprise, confrontation, and the kind of moment that makes your heart race. It's a story that might make you reflect on your own experiences and the people you hold closest. It all started on an ordinary weekday morning. John had taken the day off work, planning to tackle some repairs around the house. But after a restless night, he decided to take an early walk and clear his mind. By the time he returned, the sun was just rising, painting the sky in soft pinks and oranges. The house was unusually quiet. He kicked off his shoes, noticing a second pair neatly placed next to the door, a pair he didn't recognize. A strange sensation crept into his chest, a mix of confusion and unease. As he moved toward the kitchen, he could hear faint murmurs, like a conversation being cut short. And then, there she was, Emily, his wife of 15 years, standing frozen by the sink. Her eyes widened as she spotted him, and her voice faltered. "You didn't leave?" she asked, her tone uncertain, almost as if she were grasping for control of the moment. But it wasn't just her expression or the surprise in her voice. It was the energy in the room, the feeling that something wasn't right. What had she been doing? And why did she seem so startled to see him? John took a slow step into the kitchen, his gaze fixed on Emily. "Leave," he repeated, his voice calm but edged with curiosity. "Why would I leave?" Emily hesitated, a forced smile spreading across her face. "I just thought. I heard the door earlier, and I assumed you went out." Her hands fidgeted nervously, wiping invisible crumbs from the counter. John knew his wife well, better than she probably realized. And this wasn't the Emily he recognized, the confident, self-assured woman who could turn any awkward moment into a laugh. No, this Emily was different. She seemed cornered, like a child caught sneaking an extra cookie from the jar. He noticed something else, a faint smell in the air. Not food, not cleaning supplies, but perfume. It wasn't hers. Emily wore a subtle, floral scent. This was bold, musky, and completely unfamiliar. "You're up early," John said, his tone casual as he leaned against the counter. His eyes didn't leave hers. "Everything okay?" She nodded quickly, almost too quickly. "Of course. Just thought I'd get a head start on the day. Coffee?" She reached for the pot, but her hands trembled slightly, betraying her calm facade. As she poured the coffee, John's mind raced. He didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the pieces weren't adding up. The unfamiliar shoes, the strange perfume, the nervous energy radiating from Emily. Something was off. And then, as she turned to hand him the cup, a sound came from the hallway. It was faint, like the creak of a floorboard under careful footsteps. John's eyes flicked toward the noise, and for a split second, he saw Emily's composure crack. The sound grew louder. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, creeping closer to the kitchen. John's heart began to race, but he kept his expression neutral, not wanting to give anything away. Emily's eyes darted nervously to the hallway, and for the first time, she seemed completely unsure of herself. "Who's there?" John asked, his voice steady but firm. Emily quickly looked away, as if hoping he hadn't noticed the tension that had just entered the room. I don't know," she stammered, her words a little too fast. Maybe the neighbors?" Her attempt to shrug it off felt weak. John wasn't buying it. And then, as if the universe had decided to pull the rug out from under them both, the figure appeared in the doorway. A man. Tall, broad-shouldered, with messy brown hair and a look of sudden panic in his eyes. John didn't move. He didn't flinch. He just stared at the stranger, waiting for him to speak. The man swallowed hard, clearly not expecting to be caught. I didn't think you'd be back so soon," the man said, his voice low and shaky. He glanced at Emily, who now looked like she had seen a ghost. John turned to Emily. "You didn't think I'd be back?" His voice was calm, but it was clear that a storm was brewing inside him. The disbelief was written all over his face, but beneath it, something much deeper was taking shape, a mix of hurt, confusion, and anger. Emily opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. The silence in the room was deafening. John's mind was a whirlwind, racing with questions, but the most pressing one hung in the air like a heavy weight. Why didn't she think I'd be back? The man in the doorway shifted uncomfortably, and Emily, still frozen, finally managed to speak. John, please, this isn't what it looks like. Her voice was almost pleading, but John could see the cracks in her story before they even had a chance to form. John didn't respond right away. He just looked at her, studying every little detail, the way her hands trembled, the way her eyes avoided his. The silence stretched between them, thick and heavy, filled with unspoken truths that neither of them seemed ready to confront. The stranger shifted again, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. I should go, he muttered, backing away slowly. But before he could turn, John raised his hand, stopping him cold. No, John said firmly, his eyes never leaving Emily. You're not going anywhere. Not until I get some answers. Emily opened her mouth to protest, but John raised a finger, signaling her to stop. He wasn't angry, not yet. But the hurt, the betrayal? It was there, sitting at the core of him, waiting to burst out. Who is he, Emily? John asked, his voice steady but carrying a weight that only a lifetime of shared moments could bring. What's really going on here? Emily took a deep breath, her gaze falling to the floor. The man in the doorway seemed to shrink in size, as though he realized this wasn't the place for him anymore. He glanced at Emily one last time, then turned and left without a word. John could hear the faint sound of the door closing behind him, but all he could focus on was Emily, his wife, the woman he had trusted above all else, standing there, struggling to find the right words. Finally, she spoke, her voice quieter now. John, I didn't want it to happen, it just did. I never meant for you to find out this way. John took a step back, his mind reeling. You didn't want it to happen? The words left his mouth with a bitter edge, and he instantly regretted the way they sounded. But there was no taking them back now. Emily's face flushed with embarrassment, and she looked down, unable to meet his gaze. I was lonely, John. And when you started working late all the time and we stopped talking, I didn't know what else to do. John felt a pang in his chest, but he pushed it down. He had always prided himself on being a good listener, a supportive partner. But the last few months, everything had felt distant, like they were two people living under the same roof, but on different planets. He hadn't noticed the signs, hadn't seen how bad things had gotten. And now this betrayal was crashing down on him. Lonely, he echoed, his voice softer now. But, Emily, I thought we were in this together. I thought we had a strong marriage. We've been through so much, and now this. Emily wiped a tear away quickly, as though trying to hide her vulnerability, but it was too late. The crack in her armor was evident. I know, John. And I'm so sorry. I should have talked to you. I should have communicated. I shouldn't have let things get this far. The weight of her apology hung in the air, but John wasn't sure what to do with it. Could a simple sorry undo everything? Could words ever really fix what had been broken between them? He crossed his arms, still processing, trying to make sense of the chaos swirling in his mind. What do you want from me, Emily? What do you want from us now? She stood there for a moment, looking lost. I don't know, she whispered. I don't expect you to forgive me, and I don't know if we can fix this. But I love you, John. I always have. And I'll do whatever it takes to try to make things right, if you'll give me the chance. John stood there in silence, the weight of her words pressing down on him. He could feel the years of shared memories, the good times, the laughter, the quiet moments, colliding with the reality of what he was facing now. Trust, once so solid, had cracked under the strain of neglect, and now it felt like they were standing on the edge of something they couldn't come back from. But could he walk away? Could he really throw everything away just like that? His heart wavered, torn between the woman he had built a life with and the overwhelming hurt she had caused him. I don't know, Emily, he said finally, his voice low and weary. I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again." The words hit Emily like a punch to the gut. She stepped back, visibly shaken, but she didn't try to argue. She didn't make excuses. She simply nodded, as though she knew this was the reality they had to face now. "I understand," she said quietly, wiping another tear from her cheek. "I never expected forgiveness to be easy, and I know I've hurt you. I can't undo what I've done, but I'll do whatever it takes to show you that I can change. I want to fight for us, John. I want to prove that I can be the woman you deserve." John looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in a long while he saw her vulnerability, her remorse. But he also saw the woman he had fallen in love with, the woman who was standing before him now, not just as his wife, but as someone trying to make amends. The silence stretched between them, heavy but not entirely suffocating. Finally, John took a deep breath and spoke. "We can't fix this overnight, but maybe we can start by talking.
For real this time."
No more secrets, no more running away from the hard stuff." Emily nodded, a flicker of hope lighting up her eyes. "I'm willing to do that. I want to fight for us, too." In the days that followed, things were different. It wasn't easy, far from it. Trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild, and every step forward was met with moments of doubt, questions, and uncomfortable silence. But both John and Emily knew that healing couldn't happen without facing the truth, however painful it might be. They spent hours talking, long conversations where they aired their fears, their regrets, and their hopes. There were tears, yes, but there was also a quiet understanding that this was the only way forward. Slowly but surely, they began to rebuild what they had lost. Emily committed to changing her ways, not just for John, but for herself. She knew that her actions weren't just a betrayal of him, but a betrayal of the person she used to be. And John? He knew that forgiveness wasn't a one-time decision. It was a daily choice, something that required patience and effort from both of them. It wasn't a perfect recovery. There were days when the hurt resurfaced, and moments when they both questioned whether they were doing the right thing. But as they worked together, they discovered something even more powerful than the love they had once shared: resilience. They found the strength to keep moving forward, no matter how uncertain the road ahead seemed. And while they didn't have all the answers, they had each other. They had their story, the messy, complicated, and sometimes painful story of love, mistakes, and the courage to try again. John learned that forgiveness wasn't just about giving someone another chance. It was about giving himself the freedom to heal, to grow, and to let go of the past. And Emily learned that love wasn't a guarantee. It was a promise, one that needed to be kept every single day. As for the future, they didn't know what it would bring, but for the first time in a long while, they were both willing to face it together. And that's the end of today's story. If you've ever found yourself in a situation where trust was broken, you know how hard it can be to find your way back. But remember, healing is possible. It takes time, effort, and a lot of hard conversations. If you're going through something like this, don't be afraid to reach out for support, whether from a friend, a counselor, or even your partner. Love can survive, but only if we're willing to fight for it. Thanks for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next story.